You just record. Okay.
Do you wanna begin?
No, you go ahead, Lucas.
So, hello everyone. If you guys can turn on the cameras, that will be cool because it's a reading group, so it's pretty much interesting for us to see each other. This is our second meeting. We have some people that weren't here for the first time, but it's cool. In the first meeting, we introduced ourselves. We said about our desire to work together here in this reading group at Cimelad, that is part of our Film Nova, that is the Institute of Philosophy from Nova University. And in the first meeting, we talked a little about like how this group would work and how we would try to work together. And today we are reading the first chapter, that is the chapter on Kieślowski. That is actually the main chapter of the book. That is the Lacrimae Rerum chapter in a way. That is where he puts the concept of the Lacrimae Rerum. And I talked to Max. He prepared something to show us. Susana also prepared something, and I prepared something. The idea is that like we try to organize everybody that is interested at presenting something on the subject that what is Žižek trying to talk about. And maybe I can start. I wrote a little text out of this first chapter, and I discussed a little bit of this text with Susana already, also a little bit with Isabel in the supervision group that we have together on clinical cases. And I said, oh, maybe I'm gonna think about this and that on object A and the phantom in Lacanian terms. And I was trying to prepare something, and on the weekend I wrote a little text that is like 5 pages. And I'm gonna share the text with you guys. You can open it on the text window here, or maybe I think opening it on the text window, maybe it's cool. I'm just gonna share it with you. Just wait a minute. Okay. It's there. I'm sending it to you guys. I think it arrived. You guys can open it, but I'm gonna read. It's a small text. I'm trying to elaborate on the chapter. As an abstract, I try to write an abstract just to show like my intentions with the text. I'm going to start from the and actually, since I talked to you guys in the last meeting, like how could we try to deal with this as a cartel? So Žižek, it's not like a master signifier here. So we are operating with Žižek, but also with the critic of Žižek's thought. So I try to elaborate my text on that. It's not only saying like Žižek said that and that, it's trying to say, okay, there's beyond Žižek and outside of Žižek. So I start with my intentions with reading the text and what the text like made my desire go with. So from the hypothesis that psychoanalysis has more to do with cinema than it has to do with psychology, this is a study on the psychoanalytic practice that focuses on aesthetic, critical, and clinical approaches on the other scene that is the unconscious. The essay, or this little text that I wrote, tried to propose a methodology for psychoanalysis. Elaborating on contaminations between Jacques Lacan and Félix Guattari, I ask, which body and world possibilities can appear when writing other texts and other myths that are not Oedipus or Narcissus. Studies and inscriptions of the limits in representations of juxtapositions between theory and practice, between fiction and documentary. Psychoanalysis is elaborating on the unconscious, producing with texts, worlds and bodies. It is a praxis that puzzles the places of its players. It has more to do with cinema than it has to do with psychology. When the subject meets the other, there are operations happening. The surplus of these operations is the root of one's desire. So I'm talking about the division between the A, that is the other, and the S, that is the subject. We may find the root of desire, that is object A, randomly as it moves around. This is a methodology on emancipation and the paradox of freedom. In the text, if you guys open it, downloading it here, I put this Lacanian diagram that is the division between the A and the S. So you get the A, that is the big other, the S, that is the subject, the being. When they meet, that is the bared X, that is the bared subject. Afterwards, that is the bared A, that is the unconscious, and the surplus, the rest of it, is the little way, the small way, the object A. I'm trying to describe them now. A, the big other, in caps, is a space. Language is a space. It is the cinema theater, the studio, the timeline of the final cut, where the trains and their desires and the accidents are. Trains are the signifiers and their chains. The small way, the little way, is the root of desire. One's desire is metonymical to A's desire, to the big A. What A's desire wants from me, the subject asks. To desire comes from that question. The work in psychoanalysis is to question that question in a plan of immanence. That is a Deleuze-Guattari concept, but is a plan where everything can be, could be, is a plan of possibility. Because the desire is others' desire. One's desire speaks from somewhere. The bared A, the A that is crossed, is the unconscious. It is the other thing. It is the result from this first division between the big A and the subject. Jacques Lacan will say it is the woman. Something I read with Gilles Deleuze and Félix Guattari or Fred Moulton and Stefano Harney as the people to come, the minor, the undercommons, what is repressed. Unconscious, structured as language, the other thing of the unconscious, which is made of the same matter as the big other. It is a radical alterity in the fabric of our lives. And then I try to tense this with Guattari and Deleuze. I will call the subject from now on, or try to call it, the paired subject by language, a desiring machine. Desiring to desire is the map transversing and missing links into the big other, into the big A. And machine, because of language, the space does not have to be human. Placing psychoanalysis with the non-human is to propose it as something not exclusive to humans to become more humans with. Nevertheless, and then this I try to talk with Eduardo Viegas de Castro, it is better if we can declare everything as human, human-made, homogenic, not to rank in any hierarchical manner animism, religion, and science. To position psychoanalysis in a homogenic practice, in a chaotic realm with animism, religion, and science. Sigmund Freud and Jacques Lacan, they're not like Isaac Newton and Albert Einstein. They're more like Marcel Proust and James Joyce. Psychoanalysis is not science. There's no picture of the subject or the unconscious, as there is a picture of the black hole confirming Einstein's theory. Psychoanalysis acts on the border between practice and theory, between documentary and fiction. It produces in homogenic materiality, cosmos out of texts. Then I go to the three colors, blue. Julie is in a cafe. The waiter asks her if she wants coffee and ice cream. She answers, as usual. Is she there for the first time since the accident that killed her husband and daughter? Does the waiter know anything about this accident? As usual underlines where the struggle is. It is a frontal shot with her, Julie, in the center. We can see the back of the place, other tables, and the counter behind her. Julie, she takes the ashtray from another table and waits for her order. The waiter is fast, he wastes no time. Coffee and ice cream arrived. Julie pours the coffee into the ice cream with her right hand. Her left hand is on her face. When she starts eating it, music also starts. A man playing the flute outside the cafe, a street musician in a suit. I quote a song from Björk because I was with this homogenic stuff between psychoanalysis and animism, science and religion. And I was thinking about Björk because her album is called Homogenic. And I try to tense this. And then her first single is, all these accidents that happen, follow the dot. Coincidence makes sense, only with you. You don't have to speak, I feel emotional landscapes. They puzzle me. Then the riddle gets solved. And you push me up to this. State of emergency, how beautiful to be. State of emergency is where I want to be. All that no one sees, you see what's inside of me. Every nerve that hurts, you heal deep inside of me. I think this is a very paradoxical way of trying to talk about desire. Julie's story is one of retracing the map of her desire in the soundtrack of Björk's song. Lava can make textual islands to live with. The affogato in Krzysztof Kieślowski, Trois Couleurs Bleues, from 1993, is volcanic activity. Magmatic force destroys and makes Julie face the possibilities of reconstruction. Drifting tectonic plates, Iceland, rivers of fire under the snow, threatening earthquakes and eruptions. Music, in its non-representative form, is a paradoxical conduit for Julie to work at. A place for her to write, to inscribe herself, where we find the geotransactions of littoral, the smooth and striated spaces. Transactions between Jacques Lacan, Gilles Deleuze, and Félix Guattari. And that can be somehow polemic, in the psychoanalytical clinic, because how can we try to operate with them three together? But I want to think a little bit with that. The struggle to make appear a foreign language in the mother tongue. After the accident, Julie crossed Slavoj Žižek's Lacrimae Rerum wall between the symbolic and the real, and lost her invested objects from the imaginary. She lost her family. Suddenly, her libido could be free to write another romance that is not the family romance. Blue is freedom. Where are the representations of the symbolic organizing life? The real, the impossible, is there carving for the possible, for texts. Julie is in a space between the land and the sea. Swimming, she arrived in a littoral of inscription, literal and metaphorical. To inscribe yourself again in the big other is to have the possibility of maybe altering authority. Julie survived losing her objects, but one, that is object A, the object root of desire. With object A, she may be capable of scalping, and not only escaping, but like also taking the head off death by living another life in the big A, in the big other. Desiring machine is not the I, because the I, in its fortress, is to be built an intense libidinal investment. Swarming signifiers attack. The I is in a struggle between life and mission. The ideal of the I and the ideal I it should be. The ideal of the I comes from the unary trait. It is difference, a signifier that disrupts the chain of signifiers and breaks out in desiring researches. In narcissism, the mirror stage is when libido builds the body. This is the imaginary. Libidinal investments over the body and other objects making reality, not the real. Words and bodies are textual productions, fabrications. We also have the symbolic and the real in Lacanian terms. The symbolic is a text, a myth that will structure with libido a wall for the impossible, which is the real, the sexual relation in the face of mortality. Lacanian terms are very much neurotic terms. A wall for the real is me saying there is something on the other side of the wall, containing psychosis. To build a wall is also to say jump it. To make a role is also to say break it. To have a role is also to say do not perform it. Eduardo Viegas de Castro would call his book Cannibal Metaphysics another name, anti-narcissus. Perspectivism operates with the shape-shifting forces of myths and the libido by elaborating on other texts, reading by other libidinal investments. And then I have another frame that I show you guys if you can open the text. That is the operation of the ghost. That is the bird S, the bird subject, and the A. And what is in the middle is a rhombus. That is a word that I learned for here. That is the losange in French. Lacan calls this puncture, the losange, the rhombus. The puncture in the operations of the phantom is a rhombus formed by greater than and lesser than signs. It extends the relation between the S, bared by the signifier, and the small a, the root of desire, and the surplus of the meeting between the big A and the S. The subject depends on the signifier to be represented to another signifier, to have a place in the signifier chain. And the small way tracks down the process of existing in language, of occupying a place and desiring from that place. These human-made stories of desiring machines. When Contardo Caligaris, and he's a famous psychoanalyst, he did his practice and pretty much his work in Brazil, but also in the United States. He's Italian. He had his PhD with Barthes, with Roland Barthes. Contardo Caligaris writes a book that's called The Hypothesis of the Phantom. It is possible to read the hypothesis of the phantom. The phantom has a hypothesis on the buried subject. We can say that. The phantom speaks for the subject's alienations into language, into the signifier. How is it possible for A, to the small way, to be greater than the buried subject? So there are other texts that are not the ones that the phantom writes. We can go back to the frame, from the buried subject and the tension between the small way. How is it possible for the small way to be bigger than the S? And what can appear with this? I will go a little bit more in the psychoanalytical process. Virtually all drives are death drives, says Jacques Lacan, because they aim to go beyond the pleasure principle, setting life free of the limits of jouissance and another virtuality, the mirror. Forte da, from Freud's Beyond the Pleasure Principle, is agency, to throw back and forth the object, the libidinal investment of handling objects. And then I make some questions. From Beyond the Pleasure Principle, is death drive coordinating life in the big other in A? Is there freedom living in the big A? Or why should be death what sets life free? Death drive. And then I go with not listening to, like stop listening. Are there other deaths that are not Oedipus or Narcissus? Maybe Orpheus, going to the underworld with love, with singing, trust what you hear. You do not have to look. On the limits of living death and its representation. Eurydice's death is the beginning of the story of Orpheus to say that death is not the end, and to make death another place for living. The netherworld is also a place in the world. It is language, always. There's no meta language. Instead of only accepting the big A as a space for the neurotic myth to film its representations of life, as a panopticon, the Foucaultian panopticon, I go to Deleuze and Guattari with this schizoanalysis, which proposes drifting in the big other, in A, unanchored by a master signifier or governed by a semblant. For names, the foreclosed name of the father, within psychosis would be taking the symbolic out of a representation, of not having representation as a matrix there. The foreclosed name of the father opens the space for a precarious monster. Something that Žižek says, Walt Disney presents a David Lynch film. Which are the possible stories of this meeting? Schizoanalysis is a subversion of the diagram of forces in human technology by Orphic going to the underworld of the unconscious, working clinically with the drive and the transference. So it is possible to film a train that breaks the wall. The literal possibility of the train leaving the station, the film from the Lumiere from 1896, to hit the audience. That is what people said, that they were watching it in the audience and they all escaped from the room because they were afraid that the train would really, literally across the screen, the wall. Not the possession train. That is the film that Zizek is going to talk about in his film, The Pervert's Guide. The possession train from 1931, which is admired by the alienated character in the scene's metaphors. When cinema is not dangerous, it is a framing apparatus, a mastered master's dispositive of material technology. The train, and I work with train because it is the same word that Zug in German, when Freud calls the einzige Zug, that is the unary trait, is the trait that in psychoanalysis points out to an institutional analysis. How to listen to someone who wants to be in psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysts are stations that will broadcast the sound of the strings. And then I'm concluding. To become a psychoanalyst is to become an object A for the analysant. It is object A, the one that crosses the wall from the symbolic to the real. In neurosis, it is the cause of anxiety, what appears instead of the lack, instead of castration. Object A is with the unary trait, drifting but not adrift, swimming with Franz Kafka's Olympic medalist. And then I'm going to the Lesengatari and to Kafka's a short story. The swimmer in Kafka's story does not know why he's there being celebrated when he goes back home with the gold medal. He's a baby refusing his majesty. So he can desire something else, another position in the big A. Object A is the possibility of producing more desire. And then I go with the Lezangata. He desires not the lack, but the production of more desire. The medal is not the phallus. It is not the phallus. So I would not diagnose the character as an obsessive person that doesn't want to have the phallus. I'm going to say that the medal is the unheimlich, something that is not covered by libido. The champion holds the object for another life, as a swimmer or not, for other libidinal investments, for other texts, myths, and forms of life. That's like Julie in the film. Unrecognizing his championship is to be able to unrecognize back home, the big A, the other, where he came from. The swimmer is an astronaut, reaching another planet by exactly arriving at the place he came from. And then that's it. So I made this little text I shared with you. I know that Susana also prepared something and she can say it.
Yes, thank you, Lucas. Yes, I will be brief with my reading on this chapter, because I think in some points I will repeat some of your examples, but I think that at this stage repetition is also part of the process. So let's see what happens. But I will be brief because Maxim also wants to say something. So this is my personal reading on Zizek's notes of the three colors, and was guided by my interest on the way death is depicted in those films. We saw in White that Carol stages his own death, his own funeral, to use it as a bait to see again the woman he loves. And in Red, we saw an isolated retired judge refusing to leave the house and acting or pretending to be dead. Well, he acts as if he's dead. And also in Blue, after the traumatic loss of her family, Julie refuses to have any connections with reality. She doesn't care, as if she's also dead. So the trilogy shows different ways of crossing over the thin line between two different kinds of deaths. or in Lacanian terms, symbolic death and the natural biological death. And I wanted to explore how Žižek uses psychoanalysis to create a possible narrative. His method is focused on character analysis, explaining the character's thoughts and decisions. And in particular, I wanted to explore the change between these two types of death and the way that films presenting using two different ideas, which are the sublime and tears itself. So for this reason, I think that Julie's case is paradigmatic to better understand the working process of the opposition between the death drive and the symbolic order or the big other that Lucas also mentioned. So Blue is not only the story of grieving and the process of overcoming someone else's death, it is ontological structure gathering us all together on existential and ethical decisions, on those moments that divide our existence into a before and a now, into a traumatic past and an overlooking present, and the way knowledge and awareness are key issues to overcome such division. It is the story of how many deaths we die and how do we manage the number of deaths still available to spend, our supplementary deaths. And I'm thinking, as Žižek, in video games and the use of spending lives playing. So how to manage the repetition of several symbolic deaths, but with only one real natural death. And Žižek states that, and it's funny because he says that we only die twice, as we are living in between two kinds of death, as Madeleine from Hitchcock's Vertigo from the next chapter. So we have a natural death, which is a part of natural cycle of generation, corruption, of nature's continual transformation. And we have an absolute or symbolic death, which is the destruction of this cycle itself, which then liberates nature from its laws and opens the way for creation, new forms of life, ex nihilo. So these are Žižek's words. But the focus, I think, should be in their connection. The way the symbolic and the natural death connect is kind of asymmetric, either creating sublime beings, a sublime beauty, or on the contrary, terrifying monsters. And basically for the first one, just think of films inspiring narratives such as Into the Wild, directed by Sean Penn. It's the story of a young person who voluntarily disconnects from normal society and normal social rituals and is willing to live an isolated and self-sufficient life into the wild, a radical kind of freedom. And he symbolically dies because he avoids getting the attention from the others. He wants to become invisible and so on, before his real biological death. And that transition is what makes the story tragic and sublime. And on the other line of thoughts, think, for example, on Alejandro Amenabar's film The Others, in which Nicole Kidman plays a dead woman, unaware of her condition, until the frightening revelation of the dead body's photograph. So she is as shocked as the viewers are. So these are the two poles of the way symbolic death and natural death can be connected. And in fact, Žižek in his writings, he plays with the double sense of memento mori, which is a concept that I wish to work better, to explore better, which in Latin stands for remember that you must die. But funnily enough, Žižek translated as don't forget to die. Because in the case of the Nicole Kidman character, she really forgot she was dead and then she realized. So that's a funny way of reading these narratives. The remember that you must die becomes a don't forget to die, which I thought it was a funny. But I think it's a deep connection between the sublime and crying. And here I want to go again to the Lacrimae Rerum term, because these are the tears of things, of material and objective world, which is suffering and crying with us, showing our connection with the world and even with substantial things. So what is hidden in this poetic view that objects cry? The link with Julie's tears, with the Latin expression, I think it's evident. When our material world reacts with tears, it's a moment of transition and repairing. Our incapacity to cry or frightening of real tears, real with a capital R, symbolizes the emptiness of this world, apart from a community of conversations with others, a family, neighbors, and so on. So our distance from reality is inhibiting her from crying. And the hypothesis that I want to share with you is that these real tears should not be taken in the sense of genuine tears, but in the sense of Lacrimae Rerum, as the tears of the real. And this has something to do with the psychoanalytic process that Žižek works in his interpretation of the trilogy. Because the process is from initial rejection of reality, of living in existence, to its full acceptance, or from an initial isolation to a final social reconciliation. And Žižek opposes the fright of real tears to canned or fictional tears. And this distinction is based on Lacan's symbolic order. So Julie has a traumatic encounter with the real, with her family's death, of course, and reacts as if she would be dead for the symbolic community. No more links, just a radical kind of freedom. But when she becomes aware that her late husband's lover is pregnant, what happens is interesting in the narrative because she acts as if her husband dies for a second time. The imagined, idealized husband is dead again after his real natural death. Well, she's not angry or sad. It's basically a relief because now she can move on with her own life. And Julie does not cry, and no one can cry for her. This is the space of the real, in my view of the things. Thus, the importance of public tears, of crying to be seen by the others as the link or contact with a symbolic community. Because tears are the human symbol of sadness, of our personal dramas, but in Žižek's way of reading it, it can also be the symbol of happiness. We have tears of joy. And those are the tears that Julie shares with us at the end of the film. Her final tears are not of grief or sadness, but tears of agape, the unselfish love, the yes to life. So these fictional or imaginary tears put an end to the traumatic event, and only then normality can be restored. But before being ready to grieve, Julie is in between two deaths. And again, the close-up on Julie's eye is her symbolic death, of course, and shows all the links and interaction with reality are suspended, as visually reflected in her iris, as ghosts, as unrealities. And with the death of her family, she has a direct contact with the real, because in that moment, she has lost the fantasy frame, which is later restored again. But the end is Julie's own fantasy as a fictional protection or a shield. Her final tears of joy are fictional tears in the sense of belonging to her personal fantasy. But both scenes are of partial objects in the empty space, the unreal reality. And I think this is an exceptional moment of sublime beauty, a moment of great revelation, because as you know, to have and to follow an ideological fantasy is a good thing. It's the only way we have to experience reality, since the real is inherently something exceeding ideology, is inaccessible. So the moment Julie expresses her desires for something, it's the moment her fantasy constitutes and gives social significance to her interaction with the others. And this was basically my few words that I would like to share with you about the way death is depicted in those films and how this psychoanalytic frame structures the process between these two kinds of death. And now I finished my talk, and thank you. Let's move on with Maxim.
Thank you. Sorry, Susana, it was for me, it was very hard to take two presentations back to back I was overwhelmed by what Lucas was talking about. So I was kind of spinning out my interpretation of that. So maybe do you have that, what your presentation in text form? You're on mute.
Sorry. Yes, I can share with you. It's just 3 pages. This is just a brief notes on the question of death and the trilogy in particular. But yes, if you want, I can share with you.
Sure.
Excuse me, but I think it might be useful if you would do us the kindness of sharing with all of us, because these notes are helpful. And as Maxime just said, it is a lot of food for thought. So if you could.
Yes, sure. I will make it PDF file and we'll share in the chat while Maxime is talking, if you want. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to quickly respond, if I may, to Lucas's talk. There was a beautiful signifier chain there in the text from littoral, littérateur, and I would add another signifier to it, the litter as in the mouse giving birth to little mice. And Lucas asked, are there any other deaths? Yes, the death of their mouse, which was not glorious at all. And then what's interesting, that Lucas is asking, how is it possible for small object A to be greater than the bared subject? So there are other texts that are not the ones the phantom writes. So the mouse, the small object A, overwhelms Julie in the scene when she discovers the mouse and its litter in her apartment. And this mouse is so overwhelming that to counterbalance, to return power to the subject, she has to bring an external force, which is the cat. But the story of the cat is not the text that Phantom writes. It's not the Phantom as Kieślowski, as the David Lynch's Phantom, same as, I guess, what Lacan is talking about. So this is interesting because this external force as a cat has its own story, but this story is not the story we're interested in. It's not captured inside the movie. So, but the cat is required to overbalance the force of the mouse. I guess this is interesting.
And can I just interrupt before you start?
Sure, sure.
Lacan, when he goes with the littérateur is a chapter, one of the lectures from this seminar, that is seminar 18. I think it is I can share it with you. It's a very interesting lecture that he gives that we can read as a separate text from the Lacanian realm. He begins the littérateur by saying that the littérateur is the leader.
Oh.
So, because object A is the surplus, it is the rest, it is the leader of this relationship between the subject and the big A. So,
nice.
What of this leader of this rest that you're going to grab so you can build your word with, so you can put your libno investments in the word and revest the mirror, your body, the other objects. So it's with the leader that we should operate with. It's this X in the film from the philosophers that I saw with Susana. How is the film called? It's a film that Zizek has been interviewed by a director, and he says that we should embrace leader, because actually embracing leader is embracing the surplus, it's embracing the waste. But anyway,
yeah, there is also the waste sense of it. Yeah. Can I take a 2 minutes break and then I'll get back and do my presentation?
Okay, we can talk. We can maybe discuss.
Yeah, sure.
What you guys want to say from Susana and my little readings of the text, and then Maxime can come back. Someone, Marisa?
I have written a question on the meeting chat, but I hadn't sent it yet to you, Lucas. First, because it's very punctual. And the question was, from your diagram, the little a, the objet petit a, belongs to the field of the big other. That's what the division seemed to me. And that was a thing I didn't have really clear on my mind, because since the objet petit a, it brings to mind both the idea of the excess, the surplus jouissance, and the castration, the symbolic castration. For me, it was very close to the realm of the real. So I would like you to talk a little about it, if you don't mind. I'll put the question on the chat, but that's it.
Oh, thank you. That's a great question, because this diagram is from Lacan. It's from seminar 10, the anxiety seminar. So why did Lacan put the small a in the same realm as the Bayard subject and the big A? I think because it is by asking A that we can maybe understand our position in the big A, that you can operate like inside of a bigger realm that is yours, with the social, tal, communal part of the life. On the other part, there is the S, that is we can say the being, the living being that is going to be attacked by the signifiers and by language, and unconscious. So the unconscious, we don't reach it. Freud's going to say that we just reach the forms of the unconscious, like what the unconscious shows. So it's the dream, it is the symptom, it is with humor, with the jokes. So we never actually see, or we don't have an image as we have from the black hole. So that's why psychoanalysis cannot be science. Actually,
I use a lot the analogy of the black holes, because we cannot see a black hole. What we see are it's gamma rays emanations. So I always thought that Das Ding works a little bit as the emanations that allow us to postulate where the black hole is. So. And lastly, I would like to make a comment that it was unavoidable when Maxime started to talk, and he recovered the pun Lacan did with the littérature and literature. Because if we think about literature as an art, it works exactly with this. It's a surplus. Literature is not something done in order to talk about things we already know. It gets its significance on its blank spaces, and it's more important what's not said than what is said, and sometimes almost invisible ties between how it's said. So literature also gets its power from its surplus. Yeah, its excesses, and that's it.
From what is outside, it's like the Chekhov gun. If you have a gun on the wall in the first act of the play, you should use this gun afterwards. So it's like this gun is a surplus, but it has a very fundamental way of organizing the structure. So it's pretty much like literature can be a surplus, but it is actually very fundamental to organizing. Afterwards, myths are literature.
And what I mean about surplus is it has to do with this, but also with, for instance, I was reading a very interesting essay about Othello. And what I thought brilliant is that it states something that after it's said, you think, how could I never seen this before? And the author says that all the drama is about betrayal, Desdemona's false betrayal and Iago's betrayal, but actually Othello himself is a traitor because he was born a Moor and a Muslim and betrayed everything he was, and he remembers the songs his mother sung to him. And then he becomes someone who is going to go to war against all he was to defend Venice. So treason is on him before the story starts. So this is a surplus that is not, it is, but it's not seen in the text until someone who's brilliant enough say this.
Thank you a lot. That's very, very good contribution. Thank you, Marisa. Do you wanna start your presentation, Maxim?
Sure. Can I share my screen here? All right. So I prepared, I think, a very Žižekian provocation. So instead of talking directly about Žižek or Kieślowski, I would talk about a music album, which I believe is a reading of Kieślowski's Three Colors in itself. And I really want to, like, almost as Lucas gave me an epigraph for this from his text. Psychoanalysis acts on the border between praxis and theory, between documentary and fiction. It produces, in homogeneic materiality, cosmos out of texts. So it's almost like an epigraph for my presentation. Let me see how it's gonna work with sharing my PowerPoint. Has disabled participant screen sharing, boom. Is there anything we can do about that? So I can't share my screen currently. I am co-host. Okay.
Yeah, please try now. Yeah.
Hello. And then I need to technical difficulties. Do I need to restart? I'll need to reopen Zoom. I'll need to rejoin the call. Just give me like a minute.
Okay. While Maxine is out and he's going to start his presentation, just like bureaucratic stuff, next meeting, can we set this for the 27th of July? Is it good for you guys? It's a Thursday, same time. Yeah, July 27th. Is it okay? Good. And we have Hitchcock. If anyone wanted to write anything.
I'm sorry, I'll be traveling on the 27th. If you give me a moment, I will see what time does my plane leave. Maybe I can make it. Just a moment.
Yeah, take a look. Okay, go on. I was just saying,
you need to make me a co-host again, because it again does not work. Okay, let's try this. Okay, so does that work now? Where is this? Okay, do you see my screen now?
Yes, it works. Perfect.
So this is the album. It's an album by American musician, keyboard player Kevin Moore, released in 1989. The project is called Chroma Key, his band, and the album is called Dead Air for Radius. This is the absolutely amazing album cover on the left, and there is a lot of thinking that goes into cover design with any serious musicians. Sometimes it's almost as much effort as doing the music or doing the lyrics. And this, Marisa was talking about black hole, is that we cannot see black hole, we can only see the radiation. This actually fits perfectly into the whole concept of this. So one way you can see this as a black hole radiation. And there is an interesting timeline. Kieślowski released his Three Colors in between 93 and 94 in the order of French flag colors. Kevin Moore released Dead Air for Radius in December 1998, and Žižek gave his lectures on Kieślowski that later were turned in the Fright for Real Tears book, also in 98 in summer. So it's an interesting synchronicity between this cultural events. And I'm going to make a point, which is a very unusual thing to say, because people don't really care much about lyrics, but actually Lucas also gave me a start there by talking about Björk, so this is perfect. And normally people just don't think that lyrics for a pop music band could be some kind of an intellectual interpretation of something. But let's give it a try, because Žižek would absolutely do that. And my points is that this album is not just inspired or by Kieślowski's colors or references the movies, but it is an interpretation of colors. And also, this interpretation is very close to what Žižek is trying to do in his own way as a philosopher in Lacrimae Rerum. So, I'm trying to, the next slide. So first, how did I come up with this idea of associating the album with the movies? Because there's nothing openly kind of obvious about it. Like Kevin Moore would not say in an interview that, oh, I did an album dedicated to Kieślowski. He would never do anything as straightforward as that. But by kind of trying to analyze the lyrics, just by getting an intuition that there's something very complex going on there. And I'm very far from deciphering all the complexity of the lyrics and music. This is a profoundly complex piece of art, I believe. So my first kind of clue why would I connect that to colors is the structure of the song titles, song lyrics. So the first song is Colorblind, and it's talking about depression. Colorblind is a condition where people can't distinguish colors, but it's used as a metaphor for depression, as your world lost all colors. You only see grays. You don't have vivid feeling of life, right? So it's a perfect metaphor for depression. And the song is about depression. It is musically, I think, the best representation of depression in sound that I've ever heard. And the lyrics, again, it's not a straightforward reference, but the pre-chorus has this lyrics. Green can only hold you in the garden. Too much red will go right to your head. But if it's all the same to you, give me back my blue. Other colors fade anyway. So you might say, oh, it's RGB, it's not a French flag. But first, again, it's not that obvious. The white is also referenced in the song. Then it has a strong accent on blue. It resolves musically and lyrically into blue. Blue is referenced again in the song. And also the RGB, there is a deep metaphor there, because Kevin Moore is opposing the technical description, specification of colors like RGB code to our phenomenal experience of colors. It's opposing the purely materialist technical view of reality, which is really color blindness. So it's not just about psychological depression, it's about seeing reality as purely materialistic, deterministic machine, as opposed to seeing reality in color, to experiencing the domain of appearance. And also the song kind of, this lyrics is about embracing depression, as Julie does in the movie. She's not avoiding her feelings or blaming herself for being depressed. She's fully living her depression. So this matches really well. If it's all the same to you, give me back my blue. If what I have is depression, then I want to fully live my depression, fully experience it. And then I could get this release as what's happening in the movie and what's happening in the lyrics at the end. It indicates that the person, the real character, is getting released from depression. And it's also the first song. So the trilogy starts from Blue and the album starts from Colorblind with a reference to blue. Then in the middle, there is SOS. This is a song about travel and more broadly about finding a new place for yourself in life. And it has the lyrics, fly, angel, fly, older than me, I feel you, cold covered clouds, white snow, there you go. And this is snapshot from Kieślowski White. In the Eastern European winter can be really dark. In the dark earth, the colors of trees and black earth reflect in the sky. So this creates this cold covered kind of a sense, the dark grayish color in the clouds. And it's very clear in the movie in how the colors are represented there. I think it should be clear even from this little picture here. It's very dark. So white is referenced, but also, and it's a very interesting thing that creates deep connection to Kieślowski's whole work, is that the album is also a documentary. Kevin Moore was traveling across America, the United States, and interviewing different people. Just people were telling him their stories, what was happening to them at this point in their lives, just reflecting on their experience. And the album is built on around those samples. And in SOS, it starts from a sample of a German person traveling in the United States. And the first line there is, so I tried to hitchhike. From this exit, there was nothing. It perfectly reflects what Carol is experiencing. And again, fly, angel, fly. So it's not straightforward, but it's pretty clear that he's talking about white. And white is also color of the snow and desolation. It's a specific kind of freedom in desolation. Even though, of course, if blue is freedom, but it's not that one-to-one mapping, of course. So it's a complex metaphor. And then the last track is Hail Mary, and it doesn't have any lyrics from Kevin Moore. It's built on a sample of a woman talking about her visionary experience of apocalypse, and red is apocalypse. That's what Žižek is mentioning in his book, that the red ends with a scene of apocalypse, also the scene of Last Judgment, when the judge is looking on TV and he learned that 3 couples from the movies survived. So he is judging, he's presiding over Last Judgment, basically, because he's the judge. That's an obvious connection. And the sample in Hail Mary starts from, I see the sky, it's becoming a very, very bright red. Again, it's hard to miss the connection, and it's the last track. SOS is in the middle, and Colorblind, with reference to blue, is the first track. So it's pretty much, connection is pretty much there. But of course, this is not itself very interesting. So yeah, that is kind of a proof that there is a reference there. There is some kind of attempt in reading or referencing the movies. And also Kevin Moore did his own film studies. He even made his own documentaries. So he is a filmmaker on his own. And he is also a psychiatrist. So in his case, it's not very like a long stretch to interpret his work in this way, because he is most likely thinking about it. He is absolutely familiar with Kieślowski, and he is familiar with Freud, at least, maybe Lacan and Žižek too. But this, again, is only a reference. So this doesn't produce any real interpretation. And now I want to quickly go into reading one of the lyrics from the 4th track here, which is called America the Video. And I want to do a little bit of close reading of poetry here. I think the poetry is amazing. It starts with, I was half outside and half inside a dream. Like even this line. So the usual materialistic view of reality is that we're living completely outside the dream. I am just my brain. My consciousness is just a projection. It's like vapor from a teapot. Some philosophers, as you probably know, claim that consciousness does not exist, eliminativist branch of philosophy, which is quite respectable. And of course, on the opposite side, there is Buddhism, and Buddhists are saying that everything is a dream. We are living inside the dream. And now in the modern kind of scientific mythology, in the modern culture, those two things kind of go together. They're kind of connected. So on one hand, people completely believe in whatever magic, new age, what Žižek calls obscurantism. And on the other side, people now talking that, oh, my brain did that. My brain like works like that. So when people talking about themselves, they would say, my brain, they would substitute their brain somehow for their subject. And of course, Freud is radically against both those visions. And for him, this is the precise basic formula of psychoanalysis. I am half outside and half inside a dream. My subject is split into conscious and unconscious part. I don't have access or control to my own dream because my own dream is generated out of the place of unconscious. And of course, I don't have full control over my brain. That at least they would not give me any control over my subjectivity because I am not my brain. I'm also a dream. So this is beautiful, but then it gets deeper. So when I thought I heard your voice on my machine, he's using the word machine. And again, here's the opposition of voice as domain of appearance and machine as a domain of deterministic reality. So a phone is a voice machine. This is interesting. And we're dealing with the split. Again, the split that was indicated in the first line repeats itself in the second line. A machine is outside the dream, as a phone, as a mechanical device, and a voice is inside the dream. But also here's a double distance to this voice. First, because it's voicemail, because it was recorded on a machine and he missed the call, presumably. And second, because he only imagines that he heard this voice. So he isn't even sure that he heard it, which is interesting. But then if we go to the next set of lyrics, he says, lost my head in my hotel room when the ground shook. And we can go deep into this line alone because like the obvious reading is that it's California, the earthquake is starting, and he starts to panic. It's scary. An earthquake can easily kill you or damage you seriously, kill somebody else you care about. So the obvious reading is he's panicking. But then if you read into this, so there is already a spiritual dimension in it, as he's in a hotel room, he's a guest, like a guest in this world. And there is a joke implied that he's a guest in this world and he might have to leave soon because he could die from earthquake. But then if you see the ground as this mystical ground of being, and the ground shook represents this existential crisis. So this goes into, if you connect that, especially to other parts of this text, you see how it all works. Because the text is not about earthquake. It doesn't talk about earthquake in California. It's called America the Video. And then this beautiful line, had to choose between the Bible and the phone book. So, okay, we can imagine why the Bible, because he wants to pray. Read the Bible maybe to pray for himself or somebody because he's scared for his life. But why the phone book? He doesn't need phone book to call 911. He doesn't need phone book to call somebody he knows because he would have the number. He would remember the number had it written somewhere else. So if you think about it, if you connect this line to the second line, when I thought I heard your voice on my machine, this creates the picture that he wants to call somebody whose number he does not have and whose call he missed. So there's double disconnect there. And then when we think about it from Žižek's and Lacan's perspective of how relationships work through fantasy, then it makes sense, because the chorus here is America, I was blind, but now I see. America right there in front of me. What is right there in front of us? The appearance. And he was blind like colorblind in the first song, seeing only material aspect of reality, but now he sees the spiritual aspect. And spiritual aspect is not new age obscurantism, not any kind of this thing that Žižek is fighting against. It's precisely the aspect of appearance, the aspect of a dream. And this just repeats, he reinforces this idea in next two lines, and it makes no sense to me unless I see it on TV. So what is America? America is this country of fantasy, the land of the dream. And once he embraces this dimension of the dream, that now he's not blind anymore. Now he can see. And there is an amazing, like, I want to keep it brief because there's a lot, like, this texts are extremely dense. So even the kind of parts of the lyrics are very hard to interpret in any brief time. But this is a beautiful juxtaposition of lyrics and a sample. The sample has a woman talking about her relationship, her breakup with her boyfriend, apparently. And it says, and of course we were on acid in a Hilton at science fiction convention. Even this, again, there is an opposition between a hallucinatory drug, psychedelic drug like acid, and science fiction convention. This is not random. This is on purpose, absolutely. It goes along with all other kind of meaning of the text here. And the lyrics, Kevin Moore sings that life is getting esoteric, let me in your movie. Each time I walk out the door, someone mixes metaphors. Life is so much cleaner on the page. So this song is about determinism, basically, and the opposition of scripted speech as in the sample, because sample is recorded, it's gonna be the same every time you play it. But then Moore says that each time I'll walk out the doors, someone mixes metaphors. And what is language? Language is a mix of metaphors. And we cannot fix the meaning of speech, because even if it's recorded, every time we play it, it's going to be different. It's going to be mixed with something else. You cannot determine what speech means, what words mean. So life would be cleaner on the page if it could be on the page, if it could be fixed, but it can't be. And again, he plays out this development in the chorus here. And it's amazing. It's totally what Žižek is trying to do in his text. So it's like the time I lost my body and then I saw it on TV. Somehow it shed a whole dimension, but it still looked like me. So what does it mean to shed? To shed is to strip the outer layer of something. It's like snakes shed their skin, strip out of their old skin. And shed is also like a barrack for holding. See, Kevin Moore references the bicycle shed or a motorbike shed in the song on this album as well. So he plays with this idea. But if you focus on this piece of lyrics, so if he lost his body and then it shed a whole dimension, but it still looked like him. So what did it shed? It didn't shed appearance, because he says explicitly that it still looked like him. So basically his body lost the outer layer of materiality. And then it became pure appearance. That's why it's on TV, because TV is the domain of pure appearance, which is the same in this song. And it repeats over and over again on this album. And I'm quickly gonna wrap it up by just taking a good look at the cover. And there's a lot of things here. Like I don't have time, but I also wanted to mention this Žižek's famous example with a frame inside the frame. This is an example of this exactly. So what is on the cover? On one hand, in one interpretation, is the radar. It's the radar screen. And radar is a gaze. It's a device for looking at stuff. So there is a radar frame. It's a picture of its own. It's focusing on the bird. Blackbird is referenced in SOS. It says fly, angel, fly, but it also says fly, blackbird, fly. But anyway, so this frame is inside the outer frame, the frame of the album. And then it breaks this space in 4 different kind of black angles of the screen. So, which you can say that the whole kind of depression part is played out in this blackness, in the space between 2 frames. But also it represents this apocalyptic fireball, which is referenced in last track, the visionary apocalyptic speech of a woman. But I want to focus just on one last thing here, on the break, on the vertical break between dead air and full radius. This is absolutely intentional. And this is exactly the point of Žižek's spiritual materialism. So what is dead air? Is the element of nature. It's the air as material stuff. And what is radio? Radio is the spirit. Radio is the word, which is the spirit. And it's not like the radio exists in some other dimension. It exists right there. Radio is a vibration of air, but it's not the air. The air is not sound, but sound is nothing but air. So this paradox is represented as this break. This is the break between unconscious and conscious. This is the break between materiality and spirituality. And the whole album is dedicated to exploring this break. Again, I was both outside, I was half outside and half inside the dream, and so on. Again, the pun here is that when somebody is talking on a radio, we say that it's live. It's live air. This is standard expression. But the air is dead. The air is just the element. And there is one mental experiment you can do. What if you're talking on a radio and then, who knows, maybe you suddenly have a heart attack and then you die, but then your speech is still live. So you're being both live and dead, literally, at the same time, which is exactly what's happening all the time in a way, because we're just dead matter as our bodies. The spirit comes from this domain of appearance, basically, from the radio. All right, this is an amazing album. Highly recommend to listen to it. And the music perfectly matches the meaning of lyrics there. So no affiliation to Kevin Moore. I'm not advertising something. I'm not trying to sell the album for him, but I definitely highly recommend that. And I hope that it clarifies something from Žižek's interpretation. So this is what I have.
And thanks a lot, because that's where the text took your desire to, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've been thinking about it for a long time, but now it gave me kind of the more food for thought, the Žižek's text.
There's something that Lacan says, that it's not only the dream needs the phantom, so it can be a dream. So you need the structure of reality for the dream to actually be something, and psychoanalysis can appear out of the dream, because the dream is what is going to make the psychoanalytical institution to happen. It is Freud's book. It is by the interpretation of the dream that psychoanalysis exists. But you need the phantom of the symptom of the symbolic structure, so the dream disrupts something there, so the unconscious can appear. So it's thank you very much for your contribution, for all the associations for this presentation. Yes.
Yeah, thank you for providing space. And like, I would be really excited to, I know that it's really out there, and it's very hard to kind of take it in without listening to music and reading the lyrics. But if there are any kind of immediate feedback, I would really love to have some, like, take questions or whatever.
If you want to share the presentation in the mailing list afterwards, maybe people
I think I can write. Presentation is very kind of scarce. I think I could write the text with all the ideas. Like, that would be like maybe like 10, 20 pages of text. There I could really expand on it, and I can share this.
Yeah, thank you. Someone else wants to contribute, to say anything?
Can I comment something really fast? Can you hear me all well? I was thinking while you were saying about the black hole, and the only color we can see that comes out from the black is the redness. Also, in people who study like archival film, I've heard that once from a filmmaker that worked with archive. The oldest the film is, the materiality of the film, the more red it becomes, because the last layer of color that rests in the film, in the analog film, it's the color red. So it's like more the film is next to its death, it's next to its decomposition, more red it becomes. So I think it's something interesting to think on the materiality of image. The red also has this symbolic meaning of death for the history of cinema. And also just to talk a little bit more about the book, the Lacrimae and Rerum. I didn't read all the first chapter. I read like 80 pages, but I thought it was curious that Žižek, he doesn't, please correct me if I'm wrong, because I haven't read the whole book. He doesn't quote or make any reference to Veronica, the vial of Veronica, that it's the myth, the relic in the church, in the Christian institution. That's the woman that carries the face of Jesus in a piece of tissue. She's called Veronica. And Veronica, I'm not sure if he will say that further, but I remember this book of Marie-José Monzin, where there is a chapter about Veronicas, and she will say that the Veronica, it's a fake myth created by the Catholic Church to induce power and the thing that it's interesting is that in the film of Kieślowski, Veronica, she's a double, right? And the whole argument of Žižek is that Kieślowski goes out of the documentary and goes to fictions to try to reach the real. It's through fiction that he will get more closer to realness, and that's why he flees from documentary. And it's funny that he chooses a character with the name Veronica, that it's a myth about representation of Christ, that it's a fake. So I think there also Kieślowski, he has a lot of reference to biblical, that's obvious, and Decalogue is the 10 commandments. So I'm not sure, maybe it's interesting for us to go into, and also Veronica means vero icona in Latin, that means a true icon. And with the centuries, it becomes a woman, Veronica, but actually it was the name of the relic that would prove that Christ existed. That's the tissue where he was wrapped after he was dead, after his crucifixion, like the sudario, the Santo Sudario. That's considered the first photography. So I think there is an interesting line there that we could maybe talk in the next reading groups, but that this idea of myth, fake, and the representation is always a means to get to real through fakeness or through fiction. Well, I'm not sure if I was too confused, but
no, but I mean, of course, we don't have to write articles out of what we are debating here, but Vero icon and the woman and the unconscious, it works very, I mean, there's something there. Especially if you think that the woman is in the same position of the unconscious for Lacan, as this minor that is not the big A, where the man is the ontological truth. So it is what is hidden there, what is suppressed, and what representations are trying also to hide. So a Vero icon paradoxically being the unconscious. I mean, there's something there. It's interesting. It's very cool. Yeah.
And
yes, I think for the next session we can continue with the topic of fake and doppelganger and so on, because I think it's transversal to all these films. And I agree with Barbara, because I also thought that the importance of fiction for our understanding of reality, for me, this is a crucial point, because what is important in this Žižekian analysis of these characters are not the real tears in the sense of genuine tears, but the importance of reaching a point where fictional tears are the emancipation of the subject, its fantasy and so on. So for me, that was really a revelation, if you want, from the film studies perspective. But next time with it, Hitchcock, maybe Barbara could bring this again, the question of fiction, of fake, of the double, and so on. Don't know.
Excuse me if I may add something. Barbara, I don't know whether you are familiar or not with other Žižek's books, but he's an atheist, but he goes back a lot towards Christianism, like The Monstrosity of Christ and many other books. And also Alain Badiou. I think his São Paulo is one of the most interesting books I've read on this thread, and the importance of Christianism for our culture and its psychoanalytical influence, if I may say so.
Yes, Agamben also as well. He goes a lot to St. Paul's, and I don't know Alain Badiou's, but it's a tradition in representation studies.
Yeah, Barbara, you had amazing comments, and the red color of deteriorating film, this actually adds to my understanding. Even the album cover, how it's styled with this decaying red, that must be another angle of like thought that went into it. So, and the comment about the Veronica is a true icon. Yeah, I'm sure that's a part of what Žižek was kind of thinking about it. He couldn't like put all of his thoughts in a book, obviously, but this is definitely a very interesting interpretation.
And as Susana asked, I can present something next, but I'm not sure how it works. Can you please explain me?
You can see like what Žižek talks about Hitchcock that touches you, like where your desire goes after reading the text, like what I did, Susana and Maxim did. If you want to talk about F for fake, it's everything accepted, but like go with your desire there. Or like where does it touch Žižek's text?
But something short, right? Like
it doesn't have to be big, and we can debate.
Okay.
Anyone else want to say anything?
Well, I have a doubt I would like to put to the group. Maybe someone can help me. Let me find, because the book is completely chock full of annotations. So oh yeah, I'm using the Brazilian translation. So on page 32, it's talking about Filhos do Silêncio. I can't remember its original name. It's the movie with William Hurt and Marlee Matlin. And at the end of the paragraph, he's talking about, I'll try to retranslate. Afterwards, when William Hurt character, is deeply depressed because his beloved Marlee Matlin has left him, he is not capable of doing the same funny tricks with the same enthusiasm. Then there is a gaze exchange with the silent guy, a magic exchange of looks in which the boy gives to understand to the teacher that now he is completely solidary with his despair. And then he says, this silence is the silence of pulsion, which means that the final return to the father figure, the silence father figure that occurs in many Kieślowski's movies, corresponds to the refuge of hysterical woman caught in the vertiginous dialectic of desire and the stability of pulsion's eternal regress. I'm sorry for my tentative in English, but I'm not really sure about this concept of the hysteric finding a kind of refuge on the pulsion. I know about the oh my God, repetição, the repetition of missing the object A and the object of desire, but I really fail to see the relation with the hysteric. Can you help me with it?
I think he's talking that the hysterical woman does not say, or I'm going with Lacanian terms, where the signifier is. So by speaking, you're able to produce with language where the point of the pain is. That's by free association. That's going to be the contrast with the repetition of the potion. Because the drive is going to be on repetition, and it should be silent. Otherwise, you're going to try to escape it, or in a way. So I think when it goes like the hysterical woman is silent, it's because she's not going to say, where does it hurt? But the hurt is not really on the skin or on the arm or on the uterus or on the head. It's going to be actually a word that is occupying a place by libidinal investment on the person. I don't know, Joanna, you want to say anything here? But I think it's something around that you're saying.
Yeah, well, I think what bugged me was the word refuge.
Because it really occupies that place. It's in a way it is occupying a representation, occupying a word. So it needs to be silent because it is occupying there.
I see. So it's a matter of space. Like you occupy space to be.
Yeah, the Freudian word is going to be Besetzung. It is really occupying in German. It is like a troop, a platoon in stage of war is going to occupy, it's going to besetzt, or when you're not able to, the telephone is busy, it's because it is besetzt. So occupation, it's really the word in Freud, in German. So when Freud is going to say that not a representation is occupied, it's really because it is fused with this libidinal investment. In psychoanalysis, you need to say this word in order to try to make something else appear.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. So I think for today it is fine. We worked very well. We want to try to make it 1 hour, but I think we overlapped. But that was amazing because you really contributed. You talked a lot, and you put out your desire into this group. And I thank you guys very much for wanting to work together. Bureaucratic stuff. Can we make it on the 25th? For you guys, it works. The same time, 5 p.m. Lisbon. Good. So we have a deal. Barbara, you're gonna bring Hitchcock. Anyone else wants to talk about Hitchcock or anything that Hitchcock goes into your mind? No? So Barbara brings it and we're gonna discuss it. We don't have this structure, very well structured presentations. It's gonna be more chaotic, but it's great anyway. Good.
Okay, so it's done for today. Okay, thank you so much.
Yeah.
And see you within a month or so. Okay, thank you.
Okay, on the 25th, you guys can share everything on the mailing list. Who is not on the mailing list, please send me and I'll put you there. Okay?
I would love to participate to the mailing list. I will send you my email also.
Okay, I think you sent me an email. I'm gonna put you
Yes.
there.
Oh, yes, yes, really.
Good.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
See you on the
Bye.
25th
Thank
at
you.
5,
Thank you.
the same
Bye.
link. Ciao.